audio-visually recording them. If anyone doesn't want to be in the photos or the videos, can you please let us know, and we'll put like a yellow dot on your shirt. Or if there's a child here who's underage and you don't want them to be photographed or videoed, then we've got kind of bright wrist little thingies that you put on your wrists so that we can identify that in the photographs in the video. And also we have a release form if there are any children here. So welcome everyone, and thanks so much for joining us at Thirning Villa tonight. My name's Lee-Lindsay. I'm the CEO of Diversity Arts Australia, and I wanted to start, as I should, by acknowledging the First Peoples of this land on which we're gathered, the Wongal people of the Eora Nation, and also to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who Inner West Council also is on the lands of. I would also like to pay my respects to, sorry, I'll just kind of read it, I think. I wanted to also welcome the Instagram people, the people on Instagram who are kind of watching us as we're streaming this live on Instagram. So I wanted to acknowledge the custodians of this land and their ongoing art making, storytelling and resistance, and to pay my respects to elders past and present. And at Diversity Arts, where we are very focused on anti-racism in an ethno-cultural and migrant context, it's really untenable for us to talk about race and racism without acknowledging the colonisation and ongoing dispossession of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and also their power and resistance. And I realise what I'm doing wrong. I don't have my glasses on. This is going to make a world of difference. I'm like, those words, I know those words, I just kind of can't find them on the page. Okay, here we go. Okay, so always was, always will be Aboriginal land. I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Mark Drury and also Councillor De Cruz from Inner West Council, and also Diversity Arts Australia Chairperson Debbie Lee, and our other speakers and performers, Adri Lazana, convener of the Asian Australian Alliance, Wendy Zhang and Beryl Ma, and all of the artists who are here tonight. So a little bit about Diversity Arts Australia. We are a national organisation. We're focused on cultural and racial equity across all areas of the arts and cultural and creative sectors. We do research, we do strategic projects, we do education and training, and we also, have symposia and seminars. And the strategic projects that I mentioned, this is one of those projects where we invite artists to respond to issues on their own terms and do it through the actual art itself. And it's a very important part of what we do. So this project has some pretty important kind of origins. During COVID lockdown, when the first lockdown that happened, we put out a survey called Lost Work for Creatives of COVID, Lost Work for Creatives of Colour during COVID. So I think we were going for the longest possible name for a survey, and I think we might have succeeded. We ended up putting another 2 surveys out, but what came back to us in that first survey, where we were trying to understand what the impacts of COVID had been on creatives of colour, was people telling us about their experiences of anti-Asian racism, so the artists and the creatives who we represent. And we also had artists and creatives emailing us, telling us about their experiences at the supermarket or other experiences they had. And interestingly, we were running a workshop right at the beginning of the pandemic in Australia here with the Refugee Art Project. And 2 of our filmmakers who were Asian/Asian Australian were actually verbally abused, and language was used, specific to kind of COVID. And so we were, thinking about what can we do? What role can Diversity Arts Australia play? And we spoke to our friends at Asian Australian Alliance and Democracy in Colour. We knew Asian Australian Alliance were working on a survey and an incident kind of incident report, and we wanted to support it. So with Democracy in Colour, we wanted to support the work they were doing, and then they in turn supported the work we were doing. And what emerged from that was the idea of I'm Not a Virus. So a project that initially we thought we'd engage 10 artists on, and we ended up engaging 68. It became a national project. Inner West Council came on as a partner, as did Refugee Art Project, and 10 artists from the Inner West were selected and funded to create works responding to COVID racism. So that's the context of the project. But I want to, before I talk anymore and go totally off script, I want to introduce you to our formidable, fabulous and just incredible chair, Debbie Lee. I want to read her bio first, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about the project. Debbie Lee is Chair of Diversity Arts Australia and is currently Matchbox Pictures Director of Scripted Development. In all of her work, Debbie has been a fierce advocate and change maker for greater diversity and inclusion in the screen and media industry. Debbie provides creative leadership to the development of scripted content across a broad range of genres and markets. She also serves as an executive producer on a number of projects: Safe Harbour, The Family Law, Mustangs FC, which is a favourite of mine and my daughter's, Hungry Ghosts and The Heights. Before joining Matchbox, Debbie was ABC TV's head of comedy, where she commissioned and executive produced shows including A Moody Christmas, Please Like Me, Lay Is a Date, Upper Middle Bogan and The Strange Calls. And prior to that, she worked as a series producer for experimental short film show Eat Carpet for SBS, and then as a commissioning editor for drama and comedy for SBS Independent. And there's a lot more. So without any further ado, welcome Debbie Lee to officially launch
how very old I am when you read that. This is like how many jobs that you had. Anyway, hopefully you can excuse me for reading today. Look, it's such an honour to be here, to be asked to open this exhibition on behalf of Diversity Arts Australia, also known as DARTS, which is part of the ongoing project I'm Not a Virus. And as a recently returned resident of the Inner West, after living on the other side of town for quite a number of years, where my friends are going, well, surely, you know, Inner West is best, and why is it taking you so long to get back over here? It's wonderful to live in an area where the council genuinely appreciate how important it is to invest in the arts, and importantly in this instance supporting a diversity of voices in response to a really uncomfortable reality that reasserted itself during COVID times. Not that we're totally out of COVID times, but certainly reasserted itself in a really strong way, both locally and globally. Rituals of Resistance is a great showcase for DART's long-standing work in creating spaces for artists and creatives and leaders and audiences to reflect on the very complex and rich diversity of community, locally and globally. It was born out of a time of global crisis. The height of the pandemic was a time that could bring out the best, where it really drew people together and there was kindness amongst strangers, but it also brought out the worst in people under duress, where racist narratives emerged, the blame game. COVID-related racism towards Asians, particularly the Chinese community, have been very real in Australia, but also internationally. It's been a time of real financial precarity for a lot of people. There's been, globally social and economic pressure that impacts on mental health, amongst other things. So for artists of colour, for artists from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, they've not only faced lost work, but also the emotional burden of having the richness of their culture mischaracterised and attacked. This makes spaces like this so special and empowering. In this exhibition we're seeing multiplicities, we're seeing nuance and a really fantastic array of the creativity that exists amongst all communities, every community, but specifically in this case perspectives from Asian artists. Being Asian isn't one thing, obviously, it's subjective and it's complex. And in this exhibition, we're see a wide spectrum of responses to the anti-Asian racism that has been occurring. So it connects audiences and artists to reflect on just very different sides to the story. Sorry for this paper running here. DARTS has always recognised that issues of racism and underrepresentation in the arts are systemic. The past few years have brought that to the fore. So we really need to just keep up the momentum and ensure that artists continue to have sustainable pipelines and genuine support. As Australia's national voice for cultural and linguistic diversity in the arts, screen and creative sectors, DARTS works in partnership with other communities and movements, and that's a really important part of the work, and it certainly has helped to bring this exhibition today into life. So with that in mind, a few thanks. I want to acknowledge and thank the project's supporters and partners, particularly Inner West Council, our exhibition partners, the Refugee Art Project, and our many other partners on the broader I'm Not a Virus project, including the Australian Council, Create New South Wales, Creative Victoria, City of Sydney, City of Parramatta, and our organisational sponsor, ACE. I also want to congratulate and thank the wonderful artists whose work you can see tonight. Susan Chen, Dongwang, Benjamin Ho, Beryl, Jasper, Lee-Lindsay, Teresa Lee, Jasmine, Poole, NC Chen, Martyn, Reyes, and Wendy, Zhang. And a final thank you to the magnificent Lena, and to the wonderful DARTS team who worked so hard, along with everyone who's helped to bring this exhibition to life. So with that, it is my privilege and pleasure to declare Rituals of Resistance Inner West Artists Respond to I Am Not a Virus, another long, very long title, officially opened. We were going to show just a short 3-minute trailer of the works, but I don't know if Eliza, do you think it's going to work? I think we're going to go ahead. Shall we give it a go?
East of the Inner West, as in Newtown. I've been all around Sydney, it's always been my home, and yet I've still found people keep asking, so what's your background?
Sometimes I forget that I'm Asian. I forget about the never-ending cycle of proving my humanity, of my worthiness, to a country that I rightfully belong to. The perpetual foreign effect means that an Asian will never...
And then the other things that I would encounter, and this is probably the most painful, is nobody should join me during morning tea or lunch break or dinner break. I have to have my own table on my own while the rest of them are on with the other staff.
Mark Drury has continuously worked for others for social and economic justice for over 30 years. Mark is someone who I've known for many years in many different ways, including as we worked alongside each other in social and communities, in the social and community services sector, and also through friends and family and connections. And I know that he's a really strong advocate for artists in the creative sector. He's involved in representative, that's a really long word. He's basically involved in politics because he wants to get things done for the most disadvantaged in our community. And he does so because he believes that this is in the best interest of the community as a whole. Mark has lived with his family in the Inner West for the last 25 years. Thank you so much, Mark, for being here.
Thank you, Lena. And first, let's acknowledge this is Aboriginal land. It always was, and it always will be. And I'd urge everyone to read the Uluru Statement and make a decision about what you're going to do about it. Because that statement was flawless. Secondly, let me thank the artists who've been brave enough to call out anti-Asian racism, especially those who are exhibiting here. Even with a cursory look, there's some extraordinary talent on show. Thank you to the artists. And those artists who are here who want to identify themselves, put up your hands so we can all give you a round of applause. Do you have any artists who Congratulations, it's pretty extraordinary in such a small space to have such great art. I'm going to be quite serious because I've thought about this a little bit. So I'm going to observe that one of our fellow Indo-Westies, a gentleman called Osmond Chu, who couldn't make it here tonight, was the first person I heard call out anti-Asian racism in COVID. Subsequent to that, the Asian Arts Alliance, who are representatives here tonight, is going to speak soon. The wonderful Diversity Arts Australia per capita produced a really effective report, and congratulations to all those organisations on that great report. It was effective in getting me and others who don't experience racism to see something that was going on. And that's a pretty valuable thing, to see something you don't experience, to try and understand it. And that report called on the Commonwealth to re-establish the National Anti-Racism Strategy, and this proposal was adopted by my party and now the Commonwealth, and we look forward to seeing the anti-racism strategy and see how it works. We used to have one, got abolished, got mashed. It's going to come back. A strategy is a good thing, but all of us with heart and soul know we need more than just a strategy. We need bravery, we need creativity, and that's what we've got in this exhibition here. I'm pleased, as the Council for the People's Republic of the Inner West, that we support artists and creatives to make and show work. We like connecting communities and artists and validating experiences. However, I think we need to acknowledge that racism exists in our wonderful little republic. And it should be called out and should be condemned. I know there are artists here tonight who experience first-hand racism within the Inner West. But we also need to acknowledge that the Inner West bubble is real. My recent experience working with two politicians of Asian backgrounds in an area just a kilometre or two to the west of us, reminded me how virulent racism can be and how particular anti-Asian racism can be in Sydney. I witnessed two politicians experiencing greater levels of racism than I've ever seen in my life, political life and public life. I found this quite disturbing because I've been involved in getting people of colour elected to many parliaments, but I've never seen it quite that bad. I've never got the sort of moronic comments on Facebook posts that I have in relation to those two Asian candidates. I'm still kind of searching for answers as to why that's the case. Why in Sydney is there such a virulent strain? Maybe it's the same in other cities. I don't live there. I know about where I live. So I've had dealings with just ordinary Asian-hating right-wing moronic groups in this area for quite a number of years, and they pop up and they want to spread a bit of hatred, and we often prevail and have them move on from this area. But I think the anti-Asian rants that I heard in Concord, West and Burwood really shocked me. The other thing I was reminded this week, and I had to agree with former Prime Minister Poole who called out the persistent anti-Chinese editorial stance taken by the Sydney Morning Herald. That paper is said to be a journal of record in this town. Really, it's probably a journal of what the middle class think in this town. It seems to me that that paper, which reflects and talks to the middle class of Sydney, has not strayed away from its historic anti-Chinese roots. And if you go back to the early Sydney Morning Herald papers, you'll see exactly what that is. Secondly, whilst racism expressed by what my granddaughter calls white people, and what I call people in power, is the most dangerous racism, I can't reconcile the anti-racism, the anti-Asian racism that I hear expressed by other people who come from a variety of different backgrounds. I think this is a really uncomfortable feature of multicultural Australia, one we need to address. I think my uncomfortableness with this issue is magnified as I hear some of the polling in the lead up to the referendum vote on giving Aboriginal people a voice to Parliament. And we're working with others to ensure community education about the Uluru Statement reaches a multicultural community, because that's the most fundamental issue we will deal with this year. So for me, after all that kind of musing, I come back to the artists and our need to have artists to help us explore the conundrums of life. Yes, we need the Commonwealth to step back into the fray and give us an anti-racism strategy. And we all need to think about how completely shit we will feel if that referendum fails on the next day. Think about how bad you'll feel if that goes down. But what we also need is brave artists, creative people who can call out that which is great and that which isn't great in our society. And I thank the artists, I thank Diversity Arts Australia and the Refugee Art Project for putting this on. Thank you.
Two of my favourite favourite words, just power, the P word. Very important kind of word. And I think that, you know, for us at Diversity Arts, in our submissions, we've also been calling for the anti-racism kind of strategy to be enacted throughout the arts and cultural and creative sectors. Because, you know, in every area of society, but you know, particularly in the arts and creative sectors, there's an absolute underrepresentation of people in power who are from culturally diverse backgrounds, people of colour, migrant backgrounds, refugee backgrounds. Despite us probably being now more than 40% of the population, we don't know what the new census kind of data is, but we know that in the last census we were 39% of the population. And so, yeah, so for us that's really, really critical. You know, projects like this are critical, giving power to artists and giving platform, but also changing the structures that exist, challenging those structures, and seeing more equity in the way that funding is distributed. Because at the moment, we have an arts sector where more than half of the major 200 arts and cultural organisations in Australia have nobody from a culturally diverse background. And that's a broad term. That could be someone who's Swedish or Norwegian, or someone who's Pacific Islander or Sudanese. It's very broad. More than half of arts and cultural and screen boards have no person from a culturally diverse background in any leadership position, or anybody making those decisions. And I just couldn't miss the opportunity to go on my rant about that. But so I am so excited to now be welcoming Adri Lozano, who's the state convener of the Asian Australian Alliance. Benjamin O you might know that he was going to be here tonight, and he sent his apologies, but we're very excited to have Adri here tonight. Adri is a Filipino-Australian consultant working on strategy, engagement and capital raising projects in the for-purpose space. She specialises in projects that promote social and racial justice and inclusion and representation in leadership and the arts, so she speaks our language. Adri is currently a state convener for the Asian Australian Alliance, leading on a global collaboration exploring the different ways racism has manifested across Asian ex-diasporas around the world. And as a performer herself, she leads projects with overlap in the performing arts. And there's a lot more here. She's also the Executive Manager and Manager Engagement for the UTS Office of the Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Indigenous Leadership and Engagement, where they're building Australia's first Indigenous residential college, which is awesome. She's also the philanthropy lead for TEDx Sydney and board director, communication, PR and innovation for Rotary Sydney. And also a local who lives here in the Inner West. So overall, pretty phenomenal. Welcome, Adri.
Yeah. Hi everyone, thank you so much for making time this afternoon to come along to this launch. I think the showing of support is testament to how important these kinds of projects are. So thank you everybody for coming along today. As Athena mentioned, my name is Adri. I'm a state convener for the Asian Australian Alliance. But before I start, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're gathering here today and where many of us live in the West is Best, the Wangal people of the Eora Nation. And I extend that respect to anybody who identifies as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander here today, or joining online on Instagram, or if you have connection to country, skies, and land as they do. So first of all, thank you and congratulations to Lena and Debbie for hosting this amazing event. I think it's been a long time coming and a huge work goes on behind the scenes to make something like this happen. And thank you to the councillors who are also joining us today, showing their physical and not just, in spirit support. I think that's really important for the community to see. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 coronavirus incident report the Asian Australian Alliance created over the height of COVID. That actually was a collaboration between the Asian Australian Alliance, the media site Being Asian Australian, and Osman Chu, who is a research fellow at the think tank called Per Capita. There were also other project partners who allowed us to continue the work on not just the incident report, but turn that into more of an educational campaign to let people know in the community, but also those in power, that this was a systematic problem. So key partners were Democracy in Colour and of course, Diversity Arts Australia. So they supported us in our endeavour to gather data on the impact and the reach of anti-Asian sentiment on Australia. The project actually was inspired by the work by a group in the US. You might have heard of them. They're called the Stop AAPI Hate campaign. And we saw that they created a similar incident report and in just 6 weeks amassed thousands of reports. So either self-reported by people who experienced incidences of COVID-fueled Asian hate themselves or witnessed it firsthand. We knew, looking at the Australian climate, that nothing like that existed. We don't have a centralised reporting tool or mechanism to gather the data of the instances of racism, and there was no way to collate all of this data across the states. So we just put a very quick survey monkey together and promoted that throughout the communities and our partners to enable people to share their stories. And we found that was just a simple, powerful tool to give people a platform to share what they had experienced, what they had seen. What we found was a lot of people thought that racism here in Australia on the back of COVID was not a problem here. It was just a problem overseas. But the data clearly showed over the course of collecting data over COVID and even to this date that there is a clear pattern of racist attacks against Asians and Asian Australians as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. They were not just isolated incidents. Some key things that came out of our reports periodically throughout the campaign were more of these incidents were directed at women. Some were violent, and you'll notice that some of the footage of those who told their stories were passed on to media, and they're shown on the screens as part of this exhibition. And you might be surprised, but rural and regional areas also showed reports of anti-Asian sentiment. So it's not just localized into any one area. I am not a virus has built support for Asian Australian communities in the inner west who have been affected by xenophobia and racism, with data and art working together to raise awareness of issues of COVID-19 racism in the broader community. And it really touches me that earlier our councillor Mark mentioned that he had seen the reports and seen the stories that were then passed on to the media and had that influence him and touch him in the way that he conducted his work. That's exactly what we want to do. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge the courage and vulnerability of the survey respondents. It's a very brave and scary thing to do, particularly as you know that you are the target of these attacks. And also, the talented artists right here in this exhibition. So I'm glad that you're taking the time to see their art and hear and see their stories. They've come forward in a time of hardship and real distress. And they've been able to help us shed much needed light on the systematic issues of racism against Asians and Asian Australians. This project, overall, the campaign and the incident report, has allowed Asian Australians to connect and support each other, demystify the process of making official reports, and seek guidance on mental health support. It's a really positive step that shows that active anti-racism work is an ongoing process, and we can only accomplish that together. So if you'd like to know more about the COVID-19 incident report, it's still actually live if you see something and you want to report it yourself, if you've experienced it and want to report it, and also to see the periodic reports that have been created on the back of that data that's been submitted to people in power. That's AsianAustralianAlliance.net. You'll be able to find all the information there. And I'll pass back to our gracious host,
Before you
Selena.
do, at one point there was like over 600 incidents. How many are there now? Roughly?
There are probably about 800 incidents reported. They peter in periodically. Not everyone is comfortable reporting through the incident reporting tool, even if it is anonymous. It can be a very scary thing. Sometimes it gets passed on to us through the grapevine. So somebody who knows somebody in the Alliance, through community groups and partnerships who say this horrific thing has happened, we'd like you to feed it into the data and research that you're doing, but they don't feel confident and comfortable coming forward.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to mention that at one point after the first large report was released, like there was an interim report and then the larger report, 85% of the, back then, 541 people, 85% hadn't reported it to anyone. They hadn't reported it to the police or to any of the authorities. So that is, really powerful, important work. Thank you so much, Adrian. So I now, unfortunately, Beryl, who was going to perform tonight, is unwell, and hopefully she'll be performing at the Artist Talk on the 21st of March. Come along to that on the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. But now I want to introduce Wendy Zhang. Sorry, I'm trying. Wendy Zhang, one of our artists from the Rituals of Resistance exhibition. Wendy is an Australian-Chinese artist based on Darug country in Western Sydney. She works across different technologies to create interactive experiences and illustrations, with contributions to Chatswood Nights Festival and Gallery Lane Cove. She explores the struggle of finding a rooting within our culturally diverse communities, as well as our connection to nature within our digitally focused world. Wendy's also a designer specialising in participatory design practices, and with the University of Sydney's Effective Interactions Lab, she's a researcher looking at how emerging tech can play a role in the future of care. She holds a Masters of Interactive Design and Electronic Arts. And also, welcome Wendy, come and say a few words.
Thank you all for sharing this moment of reflection today, as well as openness. I'll just touch on my artwork. The Gateway to Essentials speaks to how supermarkets have been a centre point of racial backlash towards Asians during the pandemic. Growing up in Australia, my parents owned an Asian supermarket, and then following that as a child, I saw their store as community and heritage. So it's really vital that we're continuing this conversation that these spaces, which have been fraught with tension, can be reclaimed as communal meeting grounds like we do see today. So this artwork, it's opened a conversation within the community around me, even everyone here today, and even within myself on the difficulties that we've witnessed over the pandemic. It's not an easy conversation, and I appreciate all the artists, the support of Diversity Arts Australia, and everyone here today willing to continue this dialogue. Echoing Adri, the importance of reporting and seeking mental health support, it's really difficult to find somewhere to share the story of racism, feel validated, feel believed, and be equipped to heal. It's unfortunately a really common thing across people of colour in Australia. So as a designer, for the last few months, I've been collaborating on the community project Mind Cares. It's a conversational reporting tool and resource library to help respond to and report to racism in a safe space. In particular for Aboriginal and straight, Islander women, African women, Asian women, and all women of colour. I've had the honour of this work to be encircled with many women who trusted us with their stories of racism and the pain that it has caused them. These were sanctuaries of shared understanding to ignite creative creativity, and be empowered as active co-creators. We also collaborated with mental health professionals who work with people of colour and their lived experiences. From these stories, we shared how it's a really heavy burden and immensely emotionally taxing of these experiences, but we also learned that from each other, what does healing look like? So that journey can look different for everyone, but you don't need to be alone with it. And that's just a little reminder for everyone here today. You don't need to be alone when you're going through that. So reaching out can definitely help. I just wanted to share today that my cares will be shared also on the 21st of March on the International Day of Elimination of Racism. So feel free to speak to me afterwards if you'd like to chat or to continue that conversation. Thanks everyone.
Yeah, so Wendy will be speaking here on the 21st of March from 6 to 8 p.m. So come along if you can, and you can learn more about Maya Cares, or we can put something up maybe on the web page about it, so if people are interested. I just want to thank everyone again for coming tonight, particularly Councillor Mark Drury for his very thoughtful, powerful talk, and to our wonderful chair, Debbie Lee, to Councillor De Cruz, so wonderful that you could come along, and hopefully you'll come on the 21st as well. To Asian Australian Alliance convener Adri Lozano, of course to Wendy, Zhang, who, that I thought that was very powerful hearing from the artists, and as I said, Beryl, who was going to perform, is unwell tonight. I also want to thank our very hard-working interpreter, our Auslan interpreter, Jasmine, we love, and we're just going to keep working with forever. We love Jasmine, and she's Jasmine. And really big thank you to Zena Ayali and Safta Ahmed and the folks at Refugee Art Project. We could not have done this without you and your support. And the work that you do is incredible and so needed and so important. And as a local resident, I've come here on a Saturday with my kids, and we've done some drawing with the artists, and it just opens up a whole other space for the community to make connections and that kind of reciprocity between the artists and the communities. So really important project, couldn't resist this opportunity to say that, and really wonderful to have them here. I also wanted to acknowledge and thank Inner West Council and Olivia Patchett, who's here tonight, for all of their support as well, and for the PA, and to Fairfield City Museum Gallery for helping us with equipment at such late notice, so appreciated. And really importantly, if I could just ask the Diversity Arts team, where are you?
I think a couple are taking care of the food outside.
Yeah, okay, well, I want to thank the Diversity Arts Australia team, who really worked their backsides off to put this exhibition on. We're a small team. Objects appear larger than they actually are. So we are that organisation. We're a small org with a really big ambition and strong commitment. So Liza Perez, allegedly our social media producer, however, in reality, many other things there. Thank you so much. Carolyn Tuno, wherever you are, over there, thank you. Radhika Ram-Tanita, yeah, thank you, Radhika. And of course, Simone Amelia Jordan, who is here tonight. Thank you so much for your communications work for us on this project. And someone who can't be here in person, but I'm sure is joining us on Instagram, Kevin Baffman, the producer of the overall I Am Not a Virus project and one of our very key creative producers. Thank you very much. Now stick around, have something to eat, and I'm going to be very upset if there's any food left over. So, thank you everyone.